Page 221 of The Unfolding is the story of Barry and Gina Copeland.
I said to God, is nobody hearing me up there? Literally for the next hour and a half, I just yelled my son's name, just saying, somebody's got to be listening to me up here. Why my son? Why is this happening? You know, he's a good guy.
God's story has been unfolding.
Since the beginning of time.
He invites you to be a part of it.
Wow. Another page in The Unfolding.
When someone you love is caught in addiction, it can make you feel so desperate. Hey, this is Meredith Foster. Barry and Gina Copeland have learned when it comes to addiction, desperation is a good thing. That's when you're finally in a place where you realize Jesus is your only hope. Barry and Gina have followed Jesus for years. They worked in ministry. They did all of the quote-unquote right things when it comes to raising their family. And yet their son struggled with addiction for more than a decade. He was in and out of rehab, and it was scary. If someone you love is addicted, maybe you fear for their life. It can seem like they will never be free. Barry and Gina Copeland understand, and their story will give you hope.
So Barry and I are both Christians. We went to a Christian university, met each other there, and got married, started our family. And so everything that we built in our personal lives was based on the Lord. We had twin boys, they're our only sons. They're not identical. One of them's name is Kyle. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about our journey with Kyle. One thing that sticks out in my mind, when he was baptized as a little boy, and I think he was around 8 or 9, the pastor asked him, have you accepted Jesus into your heart? And he said, yes. And he said, is there anything else that you want to say? And Kyle said, yes. He said, I want everybody to know I will never worship the devil. And of course, at that time, everybody chuckles, because, right. Oh, wow, that's cute, that came out of that little 8-year-old's mouth. But I look back and I feel like Satan was like, oh, yeah, Game on, buddy, game on.
Gina worked in ministry, literally worldwide. She worked with missionaries, and I worked with some national ministries. I worked in Christian radio. And so our lives were dedicated to this kind of a life. I mean, and our boys saw that, and this kind of thing that we're going to talk about, addiction, we never dreamed that would impact our family. How could it? I mean, we were raising them the way they should go. And somehow Satan got in there and grabbed our son. And then as a result of our codependency on Kyle and what was going on in his life, we lost our joy. I mean, we would come out of the house with grins on our faces, and we would go to work, and we did some incredible things, and we always had faith in God. We never doubted God in the whole situation, but it was hard. He became an alcoholic, and I can't imagine the thousands of hours of sleep that was lost.
When did you first have an inkling as parents that something wasn't right or something was going on?
Well, in high school, that stuff goes on. Both of the twins, they had their moments. I was in denial for a long time. Kyle went off to college. He was sharp. He had academic scholarships. He had athletic scholarships to 9 universities.
Wow.
Yeah, he was quite an athlete. And I got a call from the coach. He was at a school in Colorado, and he said, I think there's a chemical issue with your son. And I said, oh, no way. That's not possible. There's also his girlfriend out there called and said, you need to come get him. He's a mess. Finally went out and got him. But even at that, I don't know that the word addiction entered the vocabulary, because it was kind of like, no, he's just confused. He's got anxiety. When I admitted to myself that he was an addict, that's when it all changed. And that's a good thing, but it all changed because all the dreams you have for your kid, all the mourning sets in, and the guilt. What did I do wrong? Here I was working this ministry. I remember this meeting in Chicago I had with a bunch of pastors, and I remember coming away, and there's a lot of accolades with the meeting. It all went great, blah, blah, blah. And for that hour or two, we had this great meeting, and I hop in my car, and I'm headed back to Southern Illinois where we were living. And it hit me as like, if they only knew. because I was keeping it a secret too. I was trying to protect my kid. If they only knew what a mess I had made. There's so many dynamics going on, but that's what happens when you admit. The admitting and realization that addiction is really there, that's when you can start to get healing.
Did you guys come to that realization at the same time? No. Gina says no, shaking her head.
No, my father was an alcoholic. And so, I grew up as a little girl knowing what that was like and seeing that. So I think I probably had a much clearer understanding, still hoping that it wasn't the case. But, even when Kyle was in his teens or late teens, generally his MO was not going out and partying and getting wasted with friends, but his MO was more so of he wouldn't do that at the party, and then we'd hear something on the back deck and go out at 2 a.m, and there he is by himself with a bottle. So it was very much for me of like, okay, yeah, this is not normal, this is not good. But again, when you don't have the knowledge base, I'd had the experience as a little girl, but I still didn't have the knowledge base as a parent.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand the science side of addiction and how the brain changes and all of that. So with all those missing pieces, I was uncomfortable. I knew this was not good. And for me, I think at that time, I truly felt like, and I still believe that it is a spiritual warfare issue, but I think I put a lot of my energy and my prayer energy into, oh my gosh, my son's lost, he's going to hell, all of this coming in from a Christian tradition of sin management, a lot of sin management, and not, maybe experiencing and probably not projecting grace as much as I would now, knowing what I know now.
Yep. And what was he saying? Was he saying, I don't have a problem, you're making a big deal out of nothing? Was that what he was telling you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They went to high school in St. Louis, and Anheuser-Busch is big in St. Louis. So many people in our neighborhood. They're a huge employer. Everybody's fridges are full of beer. It's just really a beer culture. It was no big deal. You're making more of this than it should be, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
And as a parent, you're trying to discern, is it a deal or is it a not? I'm sure that's part of that process.
Absolutely.
Of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And again, what we didn't know was going on is, like Gina said, her dad was an alcoholic. I had a grandfather who drank a lot, was an alcoholic. I don't know that anybody ever said that. From what I know, I would say yes, he probably was. An uncle who's that way. So it was in my family as well. Mm-hmm. And of course, he had a twin brother who was also at a lot of these parties and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that alcohol did not affect his brother like it affected Kyle. Kyle now will tell you that when he had his first drink, that when he drank, it comforted him.
He said, Mom, when I had my first drink, it was like comfort food. He said, it was like my body was like, oh, this is what you have always been needing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
All the anxiety left. He was somewhat of a perfectionist. He was so gifted. He was the kid who, if somebody said, hey, let's go play basketball, and if he hadn't played basketball in a while, he would say no. And then he would go in back and he would practice. And then the next week he would go join him in basketball. He had anxiety. It was medicinal.
He went into a discipleship program when he kind of fell out of college, his first college experience. And I think that was his attempt to tackle this problem. Then sadly, it was a bad situation. So then that knocked him down lower. At that point, he hadn't specifically verbalized to us, I'm an alcoholic, I need to change. But I do think I need a change because he always had a tenderness to the Lord through all of this.
Yeah, he did. He never denied God. He prayed. And I'll tell you what, that's one of the things we've learned. There's not an addict out there that wants to be an addict. They want to get better. They don't want to be stuck there. And I had to give in to the idea of my son's got to go into rehab. And he did. He went into a year-long program at that point. He stuck it out. He went into Teen Challenge. It was a 12-month program. He was the top of the class, just like he is at
In everything?
Yeah. And graduated, and I remember going to his graduation and other guys in the program saying, this guy, you don't have to worry about Kyle. He's going to make it. He's going to make it.
And you felt that as parents, probably. We're over the hump. This is done? No?
I don't think so. We had to see it.
Yes.
We had gone through years of this at this point. Mm-hmm. He lasted about 2 weeks.
Even at his graduation, and again, this is no reflection on Teen Challenge whatsoever.
No.
This is totally where Kyle was. But even at the graduation, I was seeing how the other graduates, how they were talking, and I felt like Kyle had released like 95%, but there was still a little 5% that he was holding back, and I couldn't identify if that was, I didn't know. I'm not him. I didn't know if that was pride or what, but I just was exuberant that he had done it and had done well, but yet I was like, I don't know.
When that happens, when the relapse happens, you feel like we're back to zero. Mm-hmm. We're totally back to zero. I'll tell you what, the addicts that recover, they'll be in and out of rehabs 7, 8, 9 times. This is part of the journey, and I think that's what people listening to this need to understand is don't let that knock you down. It is part of the journey. There's going to be relapse. Eventually, after a number of rehabs and different seasons of hope, he would go months without drinking and then fail. Go months without drinking and fail.
When you say and fail, was fail a one-time thing or he was back to drinking for a season?
Usually back to drinking for a season.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we're talking about heavy. We're talking about a fifth of vodka a day. Okay. This is a little guy who's 5'6", 150 pounds, and drinking a bottle of vodka a day, a fifth of vodka a day. Wow. It was the amount of alcohol that he consumed is mind-boggling. It's amazing that he's still alive, to be honest. We had learned a few things. We'd learned that, okay, we've done all we can do to help Kyle. Now it's up to Kyle.
How many years into this are you at this point? Any idea?
He's about 15 years into it.
15 years.
Yeah.
So when you say we've done all we can do, you were...
We had helped him get into rehabs.
Okay.
We had helped him, live at our place. And in all those situations, we ended up at the same place. And frankly, emotionally, we were done.
I'll bet.
And at this point, we're taking care of my father. And we're at his home. He's in his 90s. And we did not want our son to be around him. And our son had been living there. So anyway, he was living over in St. Louis. Then came this one day. I get a text from his boss, said Kyle is drunk and is driving around. I've got a customer that's irate because Kyle didn't call on him. Anyway, this guy's obviously upset. And he said he's driving around drunk. Well, we had decided before that God, if you want him to have a DUI, if you want whatever, let's let natural consequences happen. But I looked at Gina and I said, if he truly is driving drunk and if somebody gets killed and we don't try to do something, then we're going to live with this the rest of our lives.
Hard. Such a hard place.
So we're about 60, 70 miles away in Illinois. And we hop in my truck and we start heading to, we didn't know where he was. He was somewhere. We had no idea. We knew he had his dog with him. We were going to go to where he lived and kind of go out from there.
But we did pray on the way. We prayed on the way and said, Lord, we don't want to get in your way. So if it is your will that we find him, then help it to happen quickly. And I think we even said, like, within 20 minutes. We'll give it 20 minutes. If it goes beyond that, then that's going to be our sign of no, that God would say, this is my deal, go back home.
Yeah, so we knew where he lived, and we went to the house, and we thought, well, we're going to look up and down the streets. Maybe he's in his car, sitting somewhere. Gina's on the GPS. We'd only been to the house once. We'd never even been in the house. She goes, well, there's a park over here. He's got his dog, Marcia, with him, so maybe he went there. So we go over there, drive around. That takes about 3 minutes to see the whole park. He's not there. And Gina says, well, there's another park about 5 miles from here. Okay, let's go there. So we start heading down this road. And Gina says, There's a
7-Eleven.
It's a 7-Eleven, yeah. There's a 7-Eleven there.
You know, I just kind of said it. And we drive past.
And I said, so what of it? She goes, I don't know. There's just a 7-Eleven there. And I went a little further and I said, okay. So I did a U-turn, and it's one of these old 7-Elevens. It was probably built in 1972, and it's a little bitty. It's got 5 parking spaces, that kind of thing. So you can see everything. And we pull in. His car's not there. And there was this little alley, and we pulled around to the back side of the building, and there he was. Under bushes. He was hiding. Yeah. He was hiding, and he was passed out in his car. I remember pulling around, and I'm getting goosebumps right now telling you because this was a 1 in a million shot. There he is. And that's what I said. I said, there he is. You know, everybody's journey's different. And we do believe the right thing was it was hands off. But that was the moment that God said, no, I'm not done with this kid. And I'm not done with you guys.
This moment when God showed up in such a miraculous way, it gave Barry and Gina hope. And they were going to need that hope to lean on because Kyle's journey with addiction was not over.
He came back home with us, and next day after he sobered up, what do you want to do? And there was this program in St. Louis that was it wasn't a Christian program, but it was called Harris House. It is called Harris House, and it's a really expensive program. And we hadn't laid out real big bucks before, ever. And we just kind of said, okay, this is the final straw. We're going to lay out the bucks and put him in this. And he was willing to go 30-day program. And it was an incredible program. And what made it unique was they taught us what they were teaching him.
Oh.
And we learned about scientifically what was going on in his brain, that his brain was broken, that he was not the same kid that we raised. That logic didn't matter anymore. Let me touch on that for a little bit, because this is something people need to understand is what happens is the brain literally gets rewired.
By the alcohol.
Any kind of addiction. It could be a sexual addiction. It could be any kind of addiction. And the brain rewires itself. And what happens is you've got the frontal lobe, which part of the brain. I'm not a doctor here, so understand this is an idiot telling you this stuff. But that brings the executive function. In other words, it's when I'm in a supermarket and the Reese's is there and it's $2.90 for a thing of Reese's, and my brain's going, dude, you got to have that for $3, you know. But my executive function says, that's insane. Number one, it's going to make you fat. You know, it costs a lot of money. Why are you wasting your money? So the executive function takes over. When your brain is broken, what happens is the middle part, you've got the middle part of your brain. And what happens there is that's the part that says, oh, somebody's firing a gun. I've got to get out of here. Okay, that's what takes over. Executive function quits. This thing makes its decisions in 15 seconds. And it now is making all the decisions, the important decisions of an addict's life. And it's saying, I need a drink.
I got to have it.
And not just have it, you're going to die if you do not have it.
Wow.
Yes.
It's that extreme. That's why an addict will almost starve themselves to death, because they'll drink. They won't eat for days. Kyle would not eat for days. He would get down to 120 pounds.
Wow.
And would just keep drinking. He was never hungry. But he would have that bottle of vodka is all he needed. And his brain is telling him he had to have it to survive.
Wow.
That's what happens with addicts.
Yeah.
So
that basically happens because of dopamine levels, because the normal dopamine that we have in our brains every day that gives us moments of joy. You know, for the average person, you know, you go see your favorite movie, with your buddy, you know, that was really fun. So you have a dopamine spike goes down. Or, I had my little dark chocolate just now. That felt good. And it goes up and down. And it's normal levels. Well, when we put something so foreign into our bodies, then Satan just leverages that, and the dopamine level goes sky high, and the brain is like, whoa, that was fantastic. And every time then, your brain wants more of that, more and more of it. And so that's when the rewiring happens, and it goes from being a time of joy to being a time of we need it. Wow. once that happens to the brain, the sad thing is an addict has lost the joy. So going to that movie no longer brings any kind of joy or happiness, or having that dark chocolate doesn't do it. And it takes months and months and even up to a year. So their whole thing was fake it till you make it. You know, if you used to love to go fishing, go fishing, and you just do it and you do it and you do it. And one day, if you are sober, one day it's going to give you joy again.
Wow.
You know, so that's what I just think is so admirable about anyone who is fighting an addiction, because they aren't getting the happiness and the joys that the rest of us are getting by just normal life things, you know, and they just have to keep trying and trying and trying with the idea that someday I'm going to feel that again.
Wow.
Yeah, and every journey's different, every addict's different, but it does. They say it takes, on average, 18 to 24 months before that brain will even begin to heal.
Wow.
Now, you see improvement.
Oh, yeah.
You see improvement immediately when they sober up. But as far as that healing goes, and here's the other part of it. If you have a teenager who starts drinking or using drugs, that brain quits developing at that moment.
Wow.
So if they start drinking, or if they're an addict and they're doing this for 20 years, you're dealing with a 36-year-old teenager. So that brain then has to heal and has to mature at that point. Like Gina said, if you know somebody who's trying to go get clean, admire them, because they're going through the toughest thing that none of us will ever realize.
One of Kyle's counselors at Harris House, who also was part of our support group that they provided, you know, she was an ex-addict or is a recovering addict. And she said that substance, she said, is everything. It is your lover. It is your mother. It is your father. It is your best friend. It is everything. And it is so hard. The grief and the mourning that they go through in leaving that thing is awful.
That's one of the exercises.
So it's hard, you know, physically, it's hard emotionally, you know, it's just all wrapped up together. And we do want to say, we do not discount that we believe in a God of healing. And I have a good friend who was miraculously healed. It was instant, boom, she was healed of her addiction and never had a side effect from any day going forward. But she's one that I know, and I think oftentimes the Lord takes us through these journeys for a reason, and we have to, you know, because we live in a fallen world. And again, that doesn't mean that He can't, but sometimes it seems like in our experience with others that we know that He chooses, nope, I'm going to walk through this with you.
I'm curious about your journey with God as you walked through this. Obviously, you've said you never let go of faith, because He could have healed. He could have. And I think that's what our first response is, just heal him, Lord. If you'll just do this, and then we'll just move on with life. And that's not how it went. And I'm curious about like your journey with God.
I remember one time we're probably 10 years into it. Here I am in Chicago again, kind of driving south on I-55. And I said to God, is nobody hearing me up there? This is going to sound weird, but I was like, literally for the next hour and a half, I just chanted or yelled softly and loudly in the car my son's name, just saying, somebody's got to be listening to me up here. Was I desperate? I was desperate at that point. Here I am, a man of faith in ministry.
You've seen miracles. You both have seen incredible miracles in all kinds of situations.
Oh, yeah. But why my son? Why is this happening? You know, he's a good guy. Yeah. He's not a bad guy. He wasn't out killing people. He was just trying to find comfort, and that was the only way he was finding it. We're learning at Harris House at this point about codependency and how to put up boundaries and all this kind of thing. But my Christian background said, you got to help him. And I interpreted that as, I got to fix him. That was totally wrong. And what I was doing was I was getting in the way of God. There were so many ups and downs along the way, but this Harris House experience was wonderful. The thing that happened at that point was, it wasn't a place of faith. It was inappropriate to say some things spiritually. Gina and I looked at each other and said, man, I wish we could have prayed with this person. I wish we could have, because they were telling their stories, these other loved ones who had addicts in the program. We had learned so much from them, and we owe Harris House so much. That's when we started trying to help people find hope.
We had always, for our entire married lives, been very involved in small group ministry, and so it was just natural for us to soak in everything we had learned from Harris House, but then also wanted a God portion of this. And we had been to Al-Anon, and there are some really good Al-Anon meetings as well. Mm-hmm. And maybe shame on us because, we tried a couple different ones and just felt like, it just wasn't a fit. So then we really felt like we need to start a faith-based group to help other people who have loved ones who are struggling with addiction. We Googled and we couldn't find anything, and on Amazon, I found a book called Finding Hope. The tagline is something like a field guide for families struggling with loved ones who are addicted or something like that. So I thought, this looks like something good. And it was written by a guy who was an addict whose parents were Baptist ministers. And every chapter, it was the addict telling what he was going through, and then one of his parents then would respond in every chapter to what they were going through. So I thought, this looks really interesting. Because at this point, we're thinking we're going to have to create our own curriculum. So this sounds like a good book that we can learn something from. So I ordered the book, reread the book, and then at the end, it says that they have a ministry called Finding Hope, and that they are looking for leaders, or you can get involved by going to their website and learning more. Actually, the founder, or the guy who wrote the book, he created a ministry called Hope is Alive Ministries, and that is ministries to addicts, and then they have a sub-ministry under their umbrella called Finding Hope, which is the support group for family members or, really any loved one of an addict or an alcoholic. So we found that group, and they had some online. There was nothing in Illinois. There was not one group in Illinois, a face-to-face group. They started out of Oklahoma, so they have a lot in Oklahoma, and this would have been about 3 years ago. They did have, though, out of COVID, which was awesome. During COVID, they had to go online like everyone did, so they did have an online group. So we joined the online group, really learned so much, and then decided, we want to also lead a group. So then we started an online group with them. Through that, you had asked previously, where were we in our spiritual journey? And through that experience of finding hope, I think the thing that we've really learned again about letting go and letting God, and I know we've all heard that, little cliche, but it is so true. Kind of a visual that came into my mind was when Moses' mother had to put Moses in that basket in the water, and she had no idea. Is he going to die? Is he going to drown? What's going to happen to him? But she knew if she kept him with her, he most certainly would die. That idea just gave me a lot of hope and comfort of, I have to just let him go. I have to just put him in that basket, put him in the river, and let it go, and know that I can't control.
Maybe the hardest thing you've ever done?
Yeah, it really is, yeah. Because you're acknowledging that you're not all that you think you are. And I tended to fool myself in saying, well, no, I'm not really a control freak. I just try to influence. Because that's what consultants do. And another thing, too, for me, what was crucial, and this was even before, this would have been before Harris House and all of that, but I told the Lord, I said, God, I need a verse. I need to know that you are hearing me. I need a verse to hang on to because I need direction from you. I did one of those open the Bible kind of things,
Just let it fall where it may.
Yes, exactly. What was amazing is that generally, in almost all versions, it starts out saying, all your children. But in the version that I happened to be looking at, it said, All your sons shall be taught by the Lord, and great will be their peace. I only had sons. I had 2 sons, and actually both of them were off the rails at that point spiritually. Kyle had the more obvious kind of problem. But the visual that came into my mind is literal, that he slapped my hand and he said, Gina, stop it. They're mine. I will teach them. You're done. And when I read the part that, and great will be their peace, that was like, because that's what they're looking for. You know, they were looking for peace. I was looking for peace. And so that was really, really helpful, you know, and even now as we talk to other people that are navigating these waters, it's like, ask the Lord for a verse, how, you know, dig into the word, have him teach you as well what you need to do. So again, when I read it, it was like, all your sons will be taught by the Lord. Like, get out of the way. You know? And great will be their peace. And in AA and in recovery circles, they talk about the gift of desperation, and that addicts have to have that gift of desperation before they will really find the help that they need. I think as loved ones, we have to as well. You know, we have to get so desperate for God that we know he's the only answer. He is the answer that has to happen to truly learn to depend on him and grow our faith.
And there's another story in the Bible that we've all read, probably, and that's the prodigal son story. And what's amazing when you put it in this context, it's crazy. What happens is this rich man, his son comes to him and says, I'm going to go my own way. And what does he do? He hands him the fortune, he sends him off, but the dad did not chase him. And he obviously had the resources to go after him, but he didn't.
He didn't try to talk him out of it.
No.
You know, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. That's not how it's done. You know, you're going to mess up your life. And he got out of the way.
And then all that was left was God. You know,
right.
There's no way of getting into contact. And his son winds up eating with the pigs and all that kind of stuff.
The gift of desperation.
The gift of desperation happened at that moment for that son, and he came back. It was his decision, asking for forgiveness and asking if he could be an employee essentially of his dad. And that's the example of God. That's how God treats us. And so when you look at that in the context of life and addiction, that's exactly what has to happen. To get this gift of desperation is huge. It has to be Kyle's decision to come back to him and to ask for healing and live that out. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
No. I mean, there were times, you know, really in the last 2 to 3 years, I mean, Kyle was homeless. And to know that your child is homeless, you know, this kid who, like Barry said, you know, had all these opportunities for college, and he was going to, you know, was a pre-dental major, and I mean, all of this, and now he's homeless, and we have no idea where he's at, and he doesn't want to really communicate with us. But another visual that has helped me, after I realized that Kyle's journey all these years, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 5 steps back, you know, all this whole journey, I ended up, rather than looking at each setback as, and just feeling deflated, for me, it was like there's this big whiteboard, and that Kyle's journey is all these things he had to go through, and that there's a unmarked, unchecked box. And every time that would happen, I would be like, oh, okay, good. Well, we got that one done. Now we'll see what God's going to do next. Okay, well, we got that one done. And some of them were good and some of them were horrible. But just having that faith of, all right, this is his journey. And yes, we are involved, but we are no longer in the chaos of it. We're able to pull out of that and really just have our relationship with God, do what we learned through these different avenues of, you know, one of the really wonderful mantras that Finding Hope has is, and there's a lot of them, but one is, nothing changes if nothing changes. Russell Brand, the comedian who has a long history of addiction, and he's been sober, and now even in the most recent months has given his heart to the Lord. One of his little video clips, I really love it. It says, he said, people ask me all the time, what should I do? How can I help my loved one? And he says, I tell them, you tell your loved one that I will help you change, but I will no longer help you stay the same. For family members who are thinking that if I don't call in and tell the boss that he's sick, he's going to lose his job. If I don't fill his car up for gas, then he's going to be cold tonight and won't have any heat, so I have to do that. All those things, we're really not allowing that gift of desperation to happen.
And our son now becomes homeless. We don't know where he's at. He actually was living in the woods. He was living in his car.
Is this after Harris House?
Oh, yeah. We learned a lot at Harris House, but he was struggling.
Yeah. There's been 2 more bouts of rehab since Harris House.
The addict's going to go through this. This is going to be part of it. They may go 8, 9, 12, 15 times into rehab. But what you've got to do is thank God they're going to rehab every time because they want to get better.
Yes.
You're like, well, they're never going to make it. They're bums. That's our attitude a lot of times. And that's not the case. They really are trying. It's hard. All that to say is when Kyle is homeless, we don't know where he's at. That's when I found my greatest peace. I had no choice. God, you are in control. And that's when we got a call from him saying, one more time, can you help me go into rehab? At the end of the story here, just so everybody knows, Kyle is 12 months sober now.
Wow.
And this is the first time, 12 months sober. This is different because he's out on the road. He's got a job. Every time he fills up with gas, there's alcohol everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. So he has opportunity to fail every day. But with every time that he drives away from that gas station, he's had success. And so he's growing now. His brain is clearing up, and he's the person we have never seen before. And he loves God.
There's been a handful of times where he's had a bad day, and he'll call and say, I'm just going to find a church service tonight. I need to just go worship. It's like, oh, how lovely. Instead of, I'm going to go
find a bottle.
Get some vodka, I'm going to go worship. All those years where I felt like, yes, he had given 95% to the Lord and had always still respected God, but he was holding back for whatever reason. And I don't know. I don't know if that was pride, if that was hurt, if that was him protecting his heart, because he'd had, sadly, some really severe hurts from religion and from church and that kind of thing. So who knows? But now that's his go-to, which is so great. And he's able also to influence others. He's in a Christian sober living home through Hope is Alive Ministries. So they have the bumpers in place, and there's that peer-to-peer counseling and accountability. But he is able within that to make wise decisions, good decisions, learn how to navigate life without the bottle. Another Finding Hope mantra is to replace the phrase what if with even if. When you have a loved one off the rails, and this is with anything, it doesn't matter if it's drugs or alcohol, or if it's a porn addiction, or if it's a gaming addiction, whatever, or just having a loved one that has just definitely making poor decisions. We worry, and we're always like, what if? And thinking that we need to intercede so that what if doesn't happen. But if we replace that with the phrase, even if, we're going to God with faith. Because what if is coming from a place of fear. What if Kyle would die tonight because it's going to be 17 degrees and he's homeless? But instead, even if Kyle dies tonight, I know that God has been with us. God will get us through it. God will be with Kyle at those ending times. Those of us who go through this, you have to face the fact, and we don't want to, that what if my child's going to die from this? What if my child loses their job? Then what's going to happen? But if we replace that with, even if my child loses their job, or even if my husband loses his job because of his addiction, the Lord is going to provide for me. The Lord's going to provide for my family. Take that what if out of our vocabulary, because Satan wants us to live in the what ifs. And the even if is where we can say, okay, Lord, even if, it's up to you. You've got this. You've got this.
We want people to know that no matter where they are in this world, literally, they can be a part of our Zoom group. They can get online, and we will help them find the tools so that they can find peace and joy in the middle of the chaos. Because this chaos that our addicts have, they take us on this roller coaster. You got to get off that roller coaster. In Finding Hope, we'll give them the tools to be able to navigate that journey. And there are other Zoom groups.
Mm-hmm. It's basically findinghope.today. There will be a list there of all the states that have the face-to-face in-person groups, as well as a tab there that you can click for the Zoom groups. And there's Zoom groups that are just open, like ours is an open group, whether you're a spouse or a sibling or a parent or a child of an addict. You have to be 18 to be part of a Finding Hope group. They do require that. You cannot have your addict also be in the meeting. So this is only for those who love someone who's dealing with addiction. We would love it for people who say, I want to start and lead a group, because it is so easy. They provide everything. They give you the PowerPoint, the leader notes, everything. So it's not like you have to come up with anything. They have a whole curriculum. There's way over 40 lessons. You meet twice a month, and for an hour and a half each meeting. And it's just a really wonderful ministry that takes the best, I think, of, they talk about the science side of it with the brain, but also what God and Jesus wants to do in our lives, and melds it all together.
And if you're intimidated by it, don't be intimidated. You don't have to say a word.
Right.
You can sit there and just listen and observe. What we found is people come intending to do that, and then they hear the openness of everybody else, and you hear their stories of how they are progressing. And then you'll also hear other people who are there for the first or second time, who are just frankly desperate. That's why they're there. If you're a man and you have a tendency to want to just white knuckle it, get off of that. Men seem to have a hard time getting to the group. So there'll be 90% of the people there will be women. We certainly would like to see that change.
It's so important that if you have a child going through this, whether that child is 15 or if they're 50, because that's not unusual, that both parents should be in the meeting so that you're on the same page. Because obviously this type of thing can tear relationships apart. Because one person is progressing and understanding how to let go, and then the other partner or parent is saying, no, that's ridiculous. We can't let that happen. We can't let our child be homeless. We can't, whatever. So it's really, really important that parents be on the same page when they're going through this issue.
So the choice is easy. Live in peace or live in chaos.
The slogan of Finding Hope is, it's not your fault. You are not alone, and there is hope.
There is a woman whose son has been in jail for the last 3-4 months, and he's calling her constantly saying, bail me out. And she's got the money to bail him out. Addicts have encouraged her, the recovering addicts, saying, no, leave him in there. He's okay. Week after week, she would come to the meetings and saying, I'm just distraught. I hate this. I keep saying no to my son. I love my son. He's, 17, 18 years old. So he's fairly young. And he kept, no. Well, here, after months of this, 2 weeks ago, he said, okay, I've got a story. My son is getting baptized in jail. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be going there. He's part of a Bible study. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me not to go bail him out, because he'd be on the street doing his drugs again. That's how God works. God is in control.
As parents or as spouses, anybody that loves someone that's dealing with substance abuse, we take on that, okay, what did we do? How did we mess up? And you start replaying in your mind every conversation that you had. Oh my gosh, I remember when they were 10, this happened and I shouldn't have reacted that way. And then when they were 17, or, whatever. And you just start replaying all of this, and Satan wants you to, take on all this shame and guilt about how you could have been a better parent or been a better spouse. I was in a meeting, it was a consulting gig, and I was in a meeting with some different pastors. I knew them well enough that I shared a little bit. I think we were going to open in prayer or something, and I just asked for prayer for my son Kyle. One of them said something that was so helpful to me. He said, Gina, what you need to think about is it's not you guys' fault, and that it can happen to anyone. Look at Adam and Eve. They were in the perfect environment with the perfect parent. You're looking at nature and nurture, and they had everything perfect, and they still made bad choices. While that was so obvious, oh my gosh, it took 1,000 pounds off of my shoulder, because I thought, well, that's right. I mean, I'm nowhere near the parent that God is, that God our Father is, and his children made a bad decision and decided that they knew best. They had to just try this thing out and see if it would bring them joy. When you're feeling like it's your fault, it is not your fault.
If someone you love is caught in addiction, Barry and Gina would love for you to find out more about the ministry of Hope is Alive. On their website, you'll learn about their resources like their sober living homes. They've got Bible reading plans and podcasts. And the book that Gina mentioned, it's called Finding Hope, a field guide for families affected by addiction. It's by Lance Lang. And if you would like to join the online support group that Barry and Gina host, just go to hopeisalive.net. You can click on family support groups and then click on online groups. That's where you'll find theirs. And if you need to talk with someone right now, you can call 844-3-HOPE-NOW. 844-3-HOPE-NOW. Barry and Gina want to remind you, you're not alone. It's not your fault. There is hope. Again, the website, hopeisalive.net. I'm so grateful to Barry and Gina for sharing their story. Hey, do you have a story to share? We're working on our special year-end episode of The Unfolding. It's all about angels. If you or someone you know has a story of an angelic encounter, head to the Unfolding podcast page at wowgod.com. Click that green microphone button, and you can record your story for us. Or if you want, just send me an email, meredith@wowgod.com. Big thanks to the Unfolding team who helped make every episode possible. Michael Shermack, Lindsay Caparoon, our producer and network director, Jason Rackow. The Unfolding is a Wow God production. Discover more at wowgod.com.